enough of it through Greenpeace and the Toxic March. We start off the week with a look at the quality of our air. Joining us today, we discuss this issue with Dr. Paul Tomple, Secretary of the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality, and John DeGravel, an attorney and former president of Citizens for a Clean Environment. Welcome, both of you gentlemen, this morning.
Thank you, Leo.
Of course, everybody in this area is concerned with the environment. It just seems like that coming off the last couple of weeks with the Toxic March and with the Greenpeace activities, has this environmental push been given kind of a bad name, or are people tired of it over the last week or two?
Should they be? Not. No,
I certainly hope not either.
Greenpeace's role is to bring some attention to the environment. I think they did that.
Which they've done.
Right. And although their methods aren't the same as mine, our goals are certainly the same, which is to make things better, clean up the air, the water, the land, whatever has to be done. And we're heading in that direction. I wish I could say in the last 8 months I've cleaned it all up, but I haven't. It took us a long while to get in this mess. It's going to take us a while to get out.
Okay, I'll pose the same question to you, since you're coming more from a citizen standpoint. Are we approaching the environmental issue in the correct way, you think, in the media and in the public's eye? Is there a fine line that you cross over between trying to get the public involved and turning them off?
No, I don't think so. In fact, to the contrary, the polls that were taken by the television stations while Greenpeace was here surprised me, quite frankly, because it showed that people, the majority of people, were in favor of a more aggressive, a more vocal stance in trying to clean up our environment. Local environmental groups, including mine, have always tried to work within the process. We're active in the legislature, but it surprised me to see that people, a vast majority of people, really want a stronger voice in environmental affairs.
I would see why. I mean, we all live here, so it's a very good reason to want to be involved in it. Now, past the media issue and past what we were just talking about, let's talk about the issue itself. From the standpoint of air quality, just in the last couple of months, we've lost a major industry, at least one that I can think of, because the air quality in Baton Rouge just simply was too bad, and we couldn't support yet another industry belching something into the air here. What is our hope for the short term and the long term with regard to air quality?
Short term, it's difficult to say exactly what the hope is. It's a slow problem. The solutions are going to be slow. We did lose one industry, and they may finally locate somewhere else in Louisiana, but this 7-parish area around Baton Rouge is non-attainment, meaning we don't meet the federal standards. We're not going to have any new industries above a certain size in this area unless we reduce the hydrocarbons in the air, and those hydrocarbons come from industry predominantly, although to some extent they come from automobiles. We're putting together a new plan which we have to submit to the EPA, which is going to address the issue and hopefully reduce the hydrocarbon emissions. Every industry will be asked to reduce. We're going to do some things to the automobiles. We're not quite sure what, but probably it's called lower the vapor pressure of the gasoline, especially in the summertime.
Do I hear something here possibly like California has a system of emission control checks where you have to pull in and actually, as part of a safety inspection, get an emission control check?
Not yet. Automobiles don't seem to be the major part of the problem in Louisiana, in the Baton Rouge area. In California, they are. But here, the EPA studies indicate that it's industry. So we're going to put our major effort into industries. We will help the situation, though, by controlling the fuel that goes into the automobile, although you won't be asked to get those checks yet. We'll see how this next step works. Over the long term, I think it's going to get better. The standards that we're going to come up with, new set of regulations, are going to be much stricter, and we'll see some improvement, but it's going to be slow.
John, how can people get involved? How really can the person out there who is concerned about environmental issues but does not want to really be very, upfront about it as far as like a toxic march or joining Greenpeace?
Well, they can join our group, for one, Citizens for a Clean Environment, and there are a number of different environmental groups that are quite active, and what we do, of course, is not only teach ourselves more about the issue, but we get involved in the legislature, and that's where the action is, because the more vocal we become, the more involved we become, the more responsive our legislature is to changing the laws, making it tougher, and making the environment a better place. So you can get involved by joining a local group and putting some time and some money and some effort into it.
Okay, well, we're out of time. Speaking of time and money, thank y'all very much for being here this morning, though. We're going to be discussing this issue all this week. John DeGravel and Dr. Paul Tomple, thank you for joining us this morning, and we can only hope for the best, and maybe you can actually take an active involvement there. Either call one of these gentlemen or us here at Tune In, and we'll give you more information on that. Well, on tomorrow's show, we're going to focus on water quality, and we'll have more Tune In after this break. growing concerns over how man has affected his own water supply, and the concern is no more acute than here in Louisiana and Mississippi along the Great River, particularly in the industrial corridor from here to New Orleans. Joining us today on Tune In to enlighten us on water quality, we welcome William Fontenot, Environmental Specialist in the Citizen Access Unit in the Attorney General's Office, and Jean Farr, representing the citizens group very concerned about water, the Girl Scouts of America. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome here to Tune In. First off, Mr. Fontenot, I want to ask you, is Baton Rouge is supposed to be known for its artesian well water? That's supposed to be some of the best in the country, so I understand.
That's correct.
How true is this?
Well, what's called the Baton Rouge Aquifer is some of the finest water in the country, and it is one of the wells in it that's fairly famous is Kentwood water, and it's a very deep strata of water, goes down more than 2,000 feet below the surface. And the Baton Rouge water wells, we have a couple hundred wells in the Baton Rouge area that go down anywhere from 1,300 to 2,000 feet below the surface. They're fairly deep wells.
So from the standpoint of what we call quote-unquote groundwater contamination, do we have anything to worry about here in Baton Rouge?
Probably not. There is some serious groundwater contamination in the area, however, and there's some deep contamination underneath some of the industrial facilities in Baton Rouge. Contamination goes down 300 or 400 feet below the surface, so it has gotten down, but it is being contained by the industries pumping the contamination. And but there are a number of sites that do threaten groundwater throughout Louisiana and surface water.
Such as?
Well, the Tangipahoa River is an example of a stream that gets contamination from sewage discharges and agricultural waste, and the Girl Scouts now require that, well, I guess Jean can talk a little bit about what the Girl Scouts do, but
okay.
It's an example of hundreds of streams throughout the state that have contamination problems.
Jean, what are the Girl Scouts' concerns in particular?
Well, the Tangipahoa River is our major concern right now, although all the scenic rivers throughout the state are a great concern of ours also. But we have Girl Scout Camp Whispering Pines is on the Tangipahoa River, and that's our largest piece of property in southeast Louisiana. And we're having to deny kids access to the river because it is highly contaminated with fecal pollutants.
So we're talking about a lot of sewage pollution in the Tangipahoa.
Exactly.
Any idea when that can be cleaned up? Is there something that as a citizens group or citizens move that you can impress on DEQ or the state or whatever public body takes care of that?
Well, the girls have taken a great initiative. They've been impressing upon many public bodies that it is important to them. And I think they have a great deal of ownership about it, but how much longer? That's their question.
It really is. And it's, I guess it's really a shame that it has come about, but it is a good thing that we've become more aware of it. I have to admit, though, that every time I draw up a glass of water, particularly after I see a story on a hazardous waste dump, I look at it twice before I drink it, but I drink it anyway. Obviously, we have to have water.
Right.
What is the solution here? What is it that a person on the street can do?
Well, basically, the public needs to get involved. Everyone, not just public, everyone needs to get involved in environmental problems because they affect all of us. And we have agencies like the Department of Environmental Quality that is seriously underfunded and understaffed, can't even keep up with the work that they have, much less go out and find pollution problems that need to be dealt with. And everyone ought to find out what sort of problems are in their community and get involved with groups.
Okay, now how would they do that? I mean, do you just draw some of your tap water and take it to get it tested or something, or how would you know?
Well, I think you can find by listening to the news articles on Channel 2 and hooking up with some of the environmental or citizens groups in your local area, talking to your local elected officials and say, look, I'm concerned about these things. The Girl Scouts have put on a major effort and have putting pressure to bring about some solution on the Tangipahoa River, and it's the first time ever, and it's been a problem on this river since far back as 1970.
And what are some of the other things? My girl is a Girl Scout, so
Right.
I've got a little bit of this inside information here. But what are some of the things that maybe the Girl Scouts have planned from the standpoint of trying to get this problem taken care of and cleaned up?
Well, I think that it's mainly an enforcement problem. So it's not something the girls can directly impact other than through government bodies. And they have been actively working on that. They're trying to create public awareness, and the result of that is pressure on the
letter writing
officials.
campaign, calling
certainly. There's a number of those going on. The girls get waves of letter writing going on, dear buddy letters.
Okay.
What they do is they find out who's putting the pollution into the streams, what
Right.
cities or subdivisions or dairy farmers or whatever else, and put pressure on those individuals and agencies that are responsible for looking at them and say, hey, what can you do here? What kind of support can we give you to solve this problem? And that simply hasn't happened in Louisiana. People have sat back and said, oh, well, the DEQ or the Attorney General's office is taking care of that. And it simply hasn't happened up until now.
Okay.
In Tangipahoa Parish, they're picking up ownership for the problem now, and I think that the local citizens are now saying to people who have pipes that are leaching into the river, and saying, you need to clean it up.
Okay, so people living along rivers then maybe need to find out who maybe ask municipalities if they are dumping into the river.
Report, citizen watch.
Yeah, that wouldn't hurt. Well, thanks a lot for being here, for making us all more aware of the problem and how we can be part of the solution. Thanks a lot for being here, and thank you for your efforts. Well, we've all heard the song, Don't Worry, Be Happy. After this break, we'll tell you how you can have a happier life. Stay with us. Many are finding it right in their own backyards in the form of landfills. But don't despair, there are other recycling alternatives that we should all be aware of. This morning we welcome to tune in Barbra Colehart, the Director of the Litter Control and Recycling Commission for the state of Louisiana. And next to her, actually across the hall in the state capitol, I guess, Butch Stiegel of DEQ, Division of Recycling and Waste Reduction. Welcome, Barbara. You know, one thing that I was noticing is that we talk about garbage being a growing problem, but I thought that since we introduced biodegradable things that maybe that was going to be the solution. Is it not?
We're not sure that the plastic degradable bag is all that it's cracked up to be, and we're waiting to see. We're studying it very carefully. Plastics, though, are a big problem, Leo, because they don't go away like glass and aluminum. You know, they're here for 1,000 years, and will be with us.
Styrofoam and that kind of thing.
Yes, and so our work has really been in education, making people aware of the problems of plastic and styrofoam, glass and aluminum, and paper. Paper is a big, big problem with us.
Well, I thought paper would be one of the most biodegradable things.
Well, it's the most recyclable thing. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
And really, recycling is where we're going to reduce the amount of garbage that we're having, because next year we have to reduce the amount by 25%, and that's what the Department of Environmental Quality has said is their goal. And we're hoping that with our work that we've been doing with recycling education and recycling throughout the state, in many of our communities that we work with on Louisiana Litter Watch programs and Keep America Beautiful programs, that we've laid the groundwork a little bit for the work that the Department of Environmental Quality is going to resume and mandate.
Okay, Butch, 25% by next year?
Yeah, Leo, one of the reasons that we're facing a real problem, not only in Louisiana, but in the entire country. What we're looking at is a production of more and more waste. We're looking at fewer and fewer landfills. So, I mean, it's just simple that at some point that you have to reduce. And I feel that we're, in Louisiana at this point in time, we're still at the point where we can take measures by reducing the waste.
And how do we propose to reduce the waste, especially when you're talking about 25%?
Give you one example. We have a program that is ongoing in Lafayette at this point in time, been going about 6 weeks. And it's a house-to-house pickup, 26,000 households involved on separation at the household level, pickup at the household level.
Okay, now you're saying separation, is that like dividing paper and metal and that kind of thing?
They're separating the paper, glass, and aluminum. But what has happened in that program just recently, this is in the last month, they began with a 3-time-a-week pickup. At the end of the first week, they had a 21% increase on week 2 over week 1 on participation.